My old
You ready,
one.
Jill?
'Cause
Ryan?
I had to be a student.
You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. Team,
like,
you
I
guys
don't-
ready?
Yep.
All right, great.
Couldn't even tell you how to recover.
Blue Bombardiers. All right.
Executive session lines.
I know them all. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Kingston School Committee meeting of March 5th at roughly 6 p.m. We're going to begin with a roll call. Mrs. Coleman?
Here.
Mrs. Cannon?
Here.
Mr. Chicane? Here. Mrs. Arietta?
Here.
And Timothy Lewis is here. This meeting is being recorded by Local Scene. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. All right, thank you. At this point in our agenda, we'll open up to any visitors who would like to address the committee or members of the administration. Emily, is there anyone present online that would like to speak at this time? All right, thank you. All right, the next item up for discussion is the approval of the regular minutes for February 6th, 2024. Open up to any committee member for any questions, comments, or concerns.
I will make a motion that we approve the regular school committee meeting minutes from February 6th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you. We will do a roll call vote. Oh, Mr. Chicane, go ahead.
One omission I saw on there on page 2 for the motion.
Microphone.
One amendment or correction I think needs to be made. It says the motion was seconded by, I don't have a name there. I don't recall who it was on page 2. And
Good catch.
Ms. Coleman made a motion to approve the regular minutes.
This was the
Chair
long
18.
motion. Who seconded it? Do we
And I
remember?
forget who.
No, it was the one for minutes.
It was this.
Right, that
This one, that's just the
one.
minutes, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I saw that the other day. Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
think as long as that gets updated before. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. So with the friendly amendment from Michael and the pending adjustment by Emily, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Chicane?
Yes?
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
And Timothy Lewis is a yes. Thank you. Next item up for discussion is the retainer agreement and possible vote. Jill, is that you?
Yes, in your packet, there is a retainer agreement from Duperre Law Offices, and on item number 6, the retainer agreement is $1,000 per month. There's a small typo that we can adjust before the chair and the attorney sign off on this. But we're asking for your review of this and to vote so that the chair would be able to sign on behalf of the committee, to continue working with Duperre Law.
Okay. So there's essentially two questions being asked and answered. One, do we want to continue with Duperre Law at this rate? And then the second question is, do we want to grant whomever the chair is to be the signatory power for the committee? All right, great.
Question, please. Did that amount go up, or is that the same agreement that we've had? Do we know?
Kingston is about the same.
Okay.
I can look it up. Let me see.
Okay.
I only ask for budget purposes.
Sure.
I'm assuming that we can.
And if it has gone up, it's probably reflected in the FY 25 budget. Right, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I will make a motion that we approve the retainer agreement with Duperre Law pending chairperson's signature.
Second.
Okay. So vote in the affirmative is that we continue with the agreement at the said cost and grant the chair the authority, signature authority on behalf of the committee. All right. Motion and a second. So Mr. Chicane?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
All right, Timothy Lewis is a yes. That's 5-0. Thank you. All right. Cafeteria, kitchen equipment, surplus, items and possible vote. Jill?
In your packet, you'll see a memo from Megan Ehrenholtz, our cafeteria, food nutrition director, and she is looking, she was able to obtain a grant for $12,215. In addition, because of the free meal reimbursements that she received, she's able to purchase additional equipment. She's likes the school committee to declare the existing milk cooler, holding cabinets, and refrigerator as surplus equipment. And she would have, if approved, she would have the delivering company who's bringing in the new items take away the old existing equipment at no extra cost.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions, comment, concern on this item? All right.
Oh, just one question. Is the $12,215 going to cover the full purchase price of that new refrigerator?
She has enough in the revolving account. It's not going to have an impact on the budget.
Okay.
All right. Any other talking points on this specific issue? If not, we can move into the possible vote phase.
I will make a motion that we declare the existing milk cooler, holding cabinets, and refrigerator in the Kingston cafeteria as surplus.
Second.
All right. A yes vote is to affirm the approval of this. Mr. Chicane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
And Timothy Lewis is a yes. Thank you. Okay. Next. Oh, Mr. Lewis mistakenly took something out of order. My apologies. Next item is the PAC draft and possible vote. I'm going to turn it over to Tricia Arietta to speak to this on behalf of Plymouth Area Collaborative.
I'm going to read the script that they have provided, just because I think it's pretty succinct. Okay, so as you're aware, Kingston is a member district of the Pilgrim Area Collaborative, the administrative team. Oh, my God. Thanks. Start over? Okay. As you're aware, Kingston is a member district of Pilgrim Area Collaborative. The administrative team and board of directors is in the process of updating the collaborative agreement. The agreement was first established in 1975 and modified in 2013. The document establishes procedures for the collaborative pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4E, and 603 CMR 50.00. The new draft, which was included in your packets tonight, was sent and initially approved by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, at the beginning of February. So that phase is done, and now that DESE has given the initial approval, each PAC board member asked our school committees to vote to accept the new collaborative agreement. Once the 10-member town school committee vote for the new agreement, it goes back to DESE for its final approval from the DESE commissioner. DESE has asked PAC to have this process accomplished by April 30th, 2024, so it will be effective July 1st, 2024. Pilgrim Area Collaborative has been a strong partner for our district and continues to work with our special ed department to help develop programs and placements for some of our most vulnerable students. This updated agreement allows them to continue servicing students throughout the South Shore and beyond. Any questions?
One question. Do you know the last time that we approved the agreement?
The last agreement was approved 2013.
13, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it said that right there. So this isn't something that's expected to be a regular thing?
No,
It's just because of the new?
It was some of the language and some of the
Okay.
laws in Massachusetts General Law changed, so they were just leveling up to meet those, the new language there.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Arietta. If there's no other questions for Tricia, we can enter the possible vote phase.
I make a motion to continue membership and approve the 2024 Pilgrim Area Collaborative Agreement as presented.
Second.
All right, so an affirmative vote. A yes is an affirmative vote to remain with Plymouth Area Collaborative and approve the draft on our behalf. Mr. Chicane?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
And Timothy Lewis is a yes. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tricia. All right, building assessments is the next item on the agenda. I'll turn it over to Dr. Prue.
In your packet is a facility condition assessment of both AIS and KES. As we had contracted with Habib.
Mike.
Sorry. In your packet, you'll find Habib and Associates, a facility condition assessment. And this has just come in. We had spent money to have this study done to help us determine priorities in terms of capital needs, facility needs. And so that's in your packet. What I would recommend is that the committee read through the facilities assessment, and then we invite our facilities director to our, perhaps a meeting in April to answer any questions that you may have. But it's a pretty lengthy document.
Dense reading.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Prue. I'm inclined to agree with you that we take our time to review it thoroughly before we consider a vote. All right. Is anyone else like to speak to that? Okay. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is Teachers Corner, and I was contacted earlier today that we have teachers with us remotely. So if you're able to hear us and you would like an opportunity to speak, we welcome you to do so.
Hi, I am Ashley Brainerd.
We hear you.
Oh, I think she just dropped off.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Now we can. Thank you.
I am Ashley Brainerd. I am a grade 4 teacher at KIS, and I am going to share from an update on both buildings. So everyone is happy to be shifting towards the thoughts of spring, and all grade levels are preparing for March conferences on March 21st. You should have been able to sign up for your teachers' conferences. The students are busy preparing hallway displays to showcase their work. At KES, they are wrapping up their Read Across America celebrations with guest readers, literacy centers, crafts, and activities. Grade 1 has their annual beach day coming up on this Friday. And kindergarten is preparing for their spring concert on April 10th. Be on the lookout for a special invitation. Over at KIS, the students have been very busy working on building the community and learning new skills. I know specifically in 4th grade, we are gearing up for reading bingo. Letters went home on Monday. And we do this typically during the month of March for Read Across America and to help students read new genres of books they might not have otherwise. And the goal is to read 4 books at their level during the month and to earn a bingo. So there's categories on the board for the kids to choose from, and then they can create a bingo for it. And everyone who earns a bingo this month will earn a reward. There is also a blackout challenge for kids who really want to try to read 16 books in the month. And the goal is to inspire more reading and to get students to try reading new genres they otherwise wouldn't have. And there are spirit days each Friday during the month to get kids excited about it. So both buildings are pretty busy, and KIS is also prepping for MCAS. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mrs. Brainerd. I'm glad we could accommodate. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Brainerd or anything you'd like to share in your experiences with either KES or KIS? Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Brainerd. PTO report.
I have no report. Last month, in the PTO, there was a lot of fundraising. Finished our cupcake drive. And they sold about 6,500 cupcakes, raising $6,500. Mike, sorry about that. And then we also had a local donation of about $1,700 towards the PTO enrichment programs.
All right. Great. Thank you, Mrs. Arietta, and thank you to our PTO. I know you guys do a ton of work behind the scenes, so thank you. The last time we were here, I did share about a possible PTO fundraiser to maybe increase the involvement of dads, where it would be a hockey game played amongst fathers or mothers at KIS and KES. There's been a little shift in that. This is not a PTO event. However, hockey players, adult hockey players from the Silver Lake area, that is Halifax, Plimpton, and Kingston, will play adult hockey players from Whitman-Hanson on April 6th at Hobmark Arena, and any proceeds we have from that, we will make probably a modest donation to the Kingston PTO. So despite it not being a PTO event, we are still eager to support the PTO in this capacity, so thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the building administration, and do we have
Mr. Galuski.
Mr. G on behalf of KES? So come on up, the podium is yours.
Can you hear me? Just some additional happenings to add to what was spoken about in the Teacher's Corner. Our KES Value of the Month is Curiosity. Today was our district PD day. All grade levels worked by grade level to create common writing assessments. It was a very productive day. Great to see everyone together collaborating. Students did a great job learning about pedestrian safety through MassDOT's Safe Routes program. And we've been having the high school CTE carpentry program in. They've done quite a bit of repairs and projects for us, so that's been great. We're going to try and keep them busy as well. I do have a donation vote here. So the Kingston Rec Department is looking to make donations of 7 of their water jugs to our school. Our PE teacher has expressed interest in that, as well as Dr. Whipple and I, as well, just for field day and things like that. So I do have that as having to go to a vote.
Okay.
Budget notes, Silver Lake staff to be included. We have 2 special education teachers. One is a substantially separate teacher and one is an inclusion teacher. We have 9 special education paraprofessionals and 1 special education paraprofessional that's a 1-to-1, as well as a 0.5 speech and language pathologist. New additions to our KES budget for personnel is 2 1-to-1 paraprofessionals for students that are medically complex. 1 will be in 2nd grade next year, 1 will be in 3rd grade next year. We have 1 special education teacher for our special care program. Within that program, there would be 2 paraprofessionals and 1 certified nurse assistant, and then an additional 0.5 SLP. Any questions?
What you just shared right there with the,
Special care?
are you talking about current additions to this year's budget or requests for next year's budget?
Yes, this will be opening up next year. Yep.
Thank you. And then, is kindergarten registration open? I know that's a
Yeah.
question that we get a
Yes.
lot.
That was going to be
Yes.
one of my questions. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, it is not open yet, to my knowledge.
Okay,
Yes.
but it's expected to be online this year?
Yes, all online. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Do we have a date for when that will open?
No, it should be within the next coming weeks, though. Yeah. We've been having people show up already to register, and we've had to, and they've been all excited that they're the first ones, but it's not ready yet. Yeah.
All right, well, you're getting Jane Lewis, so be prepared.
Okay.
All right.
boy.
All right, thank you.
Already?
I know.
Wow.
I might have to have another one. All right, so,
I will make a motion that we accept the 7 water jugs from the Kingston Rec Department for KES use.
Second. Oh, again.
I think Megan beat you by
I
a
think she
millisecond.
did.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So affirmative yes means that we will accept these donations. Mr. Chicane?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
And Ms. Lewis is a yes. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. G. Okay. All right, Mr. Materna.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back here. Andy Materna, principal at KIS. At KIS, I want to thank State Rep Kathy Lenatra. She came to the school the other day, visited with 5th grade, the entire 5th grade, had a great presentation in the auditorium. Today, I would like to thank all the staff that we worked with for our in-service day. Today, we worked on, all the staff worked on making common assessments from K through 6, and it was a lot of work that was done, and I'd like to thank all the staff and Melissa Farrell for her work in putting this all together. Later this week, we have Student Council-sponsored Students versus Staff basketball game happening at the middle school. Make sure that you get your tickets. From what I heard, actually, it's sold out, so make sure you have tickets. Term 2 ends next week on the 11th. Report cards are coming out on the 19th, which means we have an early release day at KIS, half day on the 21st for parent-teacher conferences. Later this month on the 25th, the Cray and Emmett team is going on a field trip to the Commonwealth Museum. And towards the end of this month, on the 27th, is Life Touch class pictures and spring photos. Any questions for KIS?
It's a very serious one. Are you playing in the basketball game?
You know it.
All right, let's see what you got.
Starting guard. Watch out. I think.
Is Officer Tim playing again? Because last year he drained a couple late scores to put the team
Couple
over the top.
buckets.
Yeah.
Oh, no mercy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what,
Okay.
I don't want to give away any surprises that may or may not happen regarding Officer Tim with this
All right.
basketball game.
All right, thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Materna?
Just one question, and I guess it's more addressed to the committee, but did we have any issues with today being a day off from school with any parents not aware? Because I know that in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of confusion about our schedule, just because the last couple of years, we've done that Monday following, and then there was a reason that it was moved to today because it was election day and the schools are polling places. But did you have any concerns?
I haven't received any emails or any phone calls,
Nobody showed up?
not that I'm aware of.
All right.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
I'm
I had
just-
one family show up today, but they were going to KES.
Okay. I think
Probably
I'm
to
just
sign up for
wondering
kindergarten.
Yeah, there you go.
But
if we need to make sure that once we've, especially if it's been an altered, amended version, that we somehow figure out a way to get it out to families more frequently, because there was a lot of questions, at least online, over the last couple of weeks about whether last Monday was a holiday or today, or a day off rather, not a holiday. So, thanks for clarifying.
not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we won't have to deal with Super Tuesday for another 4 years.
I know.
All right.
Right.
So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Materna. All right. Ms. Hickey?
Can we just move Tuesday fall?
I apologize, I went off the screen with my notes. The next vendor invoice for Kingston
I was
is...
waiting for it.
Microphone.
Microphone?
I was going to be really good and be the one that didn't get scolded. And here I go. The next vendor invoices are due to the town on March 11th and will go out as a single signature warrant later this week. Also in the school committee packet was information about the Emergency Assistance Shelter Reimbursement Program payment. I apologize that the letter that was in there for you was the Silver Lake letter. Kingston received $101,848 in the emergency assistance program from the state, and that has been set up as a similar to a grant and through the town of Kingston to be spent by the Kingston School Committee as needed.
We accept that. We need to accept that?
Yeah, so that was my fault. Jean
And-
jumped it.
How many students was that for Kingston?
And I apologize because I have the Silver Lake one in front of me, and that's the 15 students with a combined total of 971 days in membership.
And that 101,000, give or take, includes, was there any transportation, or is that a different state reimbursement?
This is just the transportation, yes, that's a different
Okay.
program. So
Great.
this is the emergency shelter. I'm sorry? Tuition. Just tuition. Just tuition.
Okay, great. Now, Jean, she had asked, do we have to vote to accept that money? So the Commonwealth cut a check to the Kingston Public Schools, and that check is waiting for our approval to be deposited?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So,
I just want to make a comment, and I know I had done so in the Silver Lake meeting. This money does not come close to what the town and the taxpayers have spent for these additional unanticipated costs. Also, as a reminder, most of these students came in November, which was after our numbers had already been done for that fiscal year. So we've essentially been working behind now. And this money doesn't even, we'll talk more about the budget later, but I just feel it needs to continue to go on record that we're aware that this money is not enough for the cost that we've spent. Thank you.
Agreed. All right, thank you, Ms. Hickey. Anything else?
Well, just, so the letter starts off by saying that this is the first payment, which leads me to believe that there will be subsequent payments, but this is just what we've received.
All right, thank you. So we have the item of accepting the funds from the Commonwealth.
I will make a motion that we accept the $101,848 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Second?
All right, so a yes vote accepts the funds to be deposited in the Kingston Public Schools account. Mr. Chicane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Arietta?
Yes.
And Timothy Lewis is a yes. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hickey.
Well, and
I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to apologize because I talked about warrants, and this isn't the part, this is the financial update. So the financial report, there's a deficit in indemnification, and that's due to a change in provider. There's a deficit in the KES substitute line, and the budget for FY25 takes that into consideration. There are deficits in various lines, KIS custodial supplies, KES tech hardware, KES principal supplies, which are absorbed within the category. There is a deficit in special education, transportation, contracted services, and tuition. We'll be allocating all remaining FY24 circuit breaker funds to offset this.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hickey.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Hickey before we move on to Mr. Lynch? Okay. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you for the curriculum instruction and assessment update. Two quick updates. Last week, February 27th and February 28th, we had 8 staff members from Kingston participate in training on our EduClimber data platform, and the purpose of that platform is to try to consolidate all of the information sources that teachers would use about student progress. For example, our DIBELS data, our data for student report cards, as well as STAR Reading and STAR Math. And so Dave Murphy and Melissa Farrell have done a lot of work to help pull in those data sources and prepare the platform. So we had a 30-person training. Dr. Whipple, Tim Coughlin, the reading specialist, Leah Emberg, Elizabeth Cummings, Ralph Brusazy, Chris Gagney, Caitlin Howard, and Brett Blett all attended, as well as about 20 other staff members from around the district. And so we're making progress toward our goal of getting better, the best data in our teachers' hands. We use a lot of assessments, and the traditional place for those is the CUME folder in the office. And you know, teachers have typically like 45 minutes a day to catch their breath and plan and things like that. So we're trying to improve access to the information and the time we spend asking students to do assessment. So this is a good milestone, and we're confident that we can train teachers on this for next year so that they're able to get a good picture of how students are performing and who might need additional support. This, and just to emphasize what Mr. Galuski and Mr. Materna brought up, we had our professional development day today where we had a K-6 focus on writing benchmarks. So all the assessments I just talked about are sort of standard measures that students would take that have to do with maybe multiple choice questions, but our teachers had an opportunity with the professional development day to collaborate and design consistent writing tasks aligned with opinion writing, information writing, and narrative writing that would be consistent across our schools and Superintendency Union 31. So Melissa Farrell deserves a lot of credit, along with our principals and assistant principals, for facilitating those sessions. So we appreciate everybody's work and collaboration on that today.
Very good, Mr. Lynch, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lynch? All right. Thank you. Jill, no pressure, but you're on.
Okay, no problem. I have sent a copy of the PowerPoint, but there's also a copy of the PowerPoint in the shared folder. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure you had it. I appreciate that. So in your packet, you will see that Sarah has provided a version 3 budget, and she has also provided actuals from 2020 to the proposed FY25 budget for your review. And before we talk about that budget, we want to talk about some of the changes that we have made since the last time we met, and some updates from Silver Lake in particular, and the assessments as well. So when we talk to you tonight, we're working off of version 3 of the Kingston budget. We had mentioned before that pre-K, as part of the regional agreement, will be recognized as a Silver Lake expense. This is how we have been operating for many, many years, decades, I'm told. But it is now going to be officially recognized through the regional agreement. Silver Lake positions in the elementary schools. Since Silver Lake only exists as a 7 through 12 and pre-K, any other special education programs that over the years we have considered Silver Lake in an elementary school will need to be absorbed by our Kingston budget, or by the budgets where those Silver Lake employees currently work. Out-of-district special education tuitions for pre-K and 7 through 12 plus students must be a Silver Lake expense per Department of Education and 2 legal opinions that we have obtained. So for many years, decades, out-of-district expenses have been charged to the elementary school budgets in towns. Moving forward, these expenses will appear in the Silver Lake budget and assessed to the towns. I think is the simplest way I can describe it. Because we were using revolving accounts to charge tuitions for these Silver Lake programs, we extended school year wasn't part of the budget. It was incorporated into a revolving account. You will now see extended school year as part of your budget, and we went over that as well. We will still need to maintain some revolving accounts. For example, in pre-K, we have to have a revolving account because we need a mechanism to charge tuitions for the typical peers, and so that will continue to exist. But for the most part, most of these revolving accounts will no longer be necessary. Special education revolving accounts, we've talked about, and the shared cost positions will be paid according to the regional agreement percentages. We were also notified that voting 3 lines, regular, special ed, and out-of-district vocational, should not be a practice that we continue. We can discuss the amounts of these different topics, but the school committee should be voting 1 budget number moving forward.
And that advice and direction came from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education?
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Please.
question about that? Please, just because maybe it's a forward question, but are all out-of-district placements, those are not all considered special education placements, are they?
So,
We could have vocation.
Right, that's what I'm wondering, like, we've got, like, if
the only
a student wants to go to a trade.
right, the exception to the rule of out-of-district, so we're talking about 2 separate things. Special education out-of-district programs must be charged to the district that they're in. So for secondary students, those should be charged to Silver Lake. The only exception to that rule is out-of-district vocational. There's special regulatory language with regards to vocational schools such as Bristol Aggie, South Shore Voc Tech,
Right.
those types of things. That's the exception to the rule.
Okay. Do we have any, I guess, say of those programs as a local school committee, since we know that the costs are very high for us this year? Like, whether we allow students to go to attend those out-of-district?
Vocational schools?
Correct.
No, they're allowed to apply if we don't offer a vocational program that they're interested in pursuing. So that's beyond school committee control. They can apply, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be accepted into that particular program or school.
Right, but we budget every year for 6 placements, and
We try to budget based upon, and we'll talk about this, based on the number of students we currently have in the program, plus a few placeholders. We won't know until April 1st the actual number. But as that date grows closer, should become a little bit more clear how close we are to the amount that we currently have budgeted and whether or not we're safe to take out a placeholder or two, for example.
Okay.
I understand that part in the procedure of it. I guess I'm just wondering how much control we have over that part of the budget. So that explains it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So just, this came up in previous years, where some members of the public will maybe be currently watching this or watching it on the recording, and there are things in the education world, language we use in the education world that isn't mainstream. So for example, to members of the community who might be watching this relative to out-of-district vocational placements, if a student in the town of Kingston who attends Silver Lake wishes to get an education in the area of electrical, which is not provided by Silver Lake Regional High School, they can apply to South Shore Vocational Tech, and if they are accepted, we are thus responsible to pay South Shore Vocational Technical School the tuition for that student.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
So the next item is circuit breaker, and for FY '25, Kingston will be eligible for all of its circuit breaker reimbursement, pre-K, and the secondary out-of-district tuitions that qualify will go directly to Kingston for Kingston students. In FY '26, Kingston will only be eligible for K through 6 students. Silver Lake will become eligible for pre-K and the out-of-district 7 through 12 and special education expenses at the secondary level. So that's how it will work moving forward. Christine has worked with Sarah, and Sarah has more information on circuit breaker to report to you for slide number 3.
Sarah, and thank you, you're going to speak to how circuit breaker will assist us financially. Can you just give a brief explanation of what circuit breaker is for members of the community? Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. Circuit breaker is aptly named, just like when you think about in your house, if the circuit for your electrical system is overloaded, the circuit breaker trips and keeps, hopefully, your house from burning down. So circuit breaker is a reimbursement program from the state for when we have out-of-district costs in, it's a reimbursement for, I was starting to talk about extraordinary relief, and I caught myself. Circuit breaker is a reimbursement for out-of-district placement costs and transportation costs that go beyond a specific threshold that's set every year by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So if, say, for example, you have a student with a $43,000 collaborative placement, that may not be enough to trigger the, to be over the threshold amount, but a student with a $75,000 collaborative placement would be eligible. Did I do that right, Dr. Panarese?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify, though, we could have a student that's an in-district placement with a substantial IEP that does qualify for circuit breaker costs. They're not all out of district, necessarily.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of how much money is just related to special education that is leaving the Kingston Intermediate and Elementary budget into Silver Lake, the total cost for Kingston preschool will be assessed at 56.9% or $1.520 million. Special education costs out of the education budget for grades 7 through 12 plus Tuition will be about $2.15 million, and transportation will be $582,036 for grades 7 through 12 plus. So those are charges that in the past would have been part of the Kingston budget that are now moving to the Silver Lake budget. And we've spoken about how future circuit breaker claims will be grades K through 6 in FY '26. So Sarah has made a number of changes since our last meeting, and she's going to speak to the version 3 changes.
Thank you, Dr. Prue. So as we move from the version 1 to the version 2 budget and the version 2 to the version 3 budget, I try to tell you what has happened. So in moving from the version 2 to the version 3 budget, we increased the amount that we are going to use from the 240 grant, which will reduce the overall budget by $170,944. We've increased the amount of offset by for the circuit breaker by $869,655 for a net change to the version 3 budget of $1,040,599. You'll see that I also put in to the budget, I created a line called tuition offset. There was a tuition line that every time I spoke about it, I had the cost for the extended school year in that tuition line and the 240 grant and the circuit breaker offset, and it was confusing to explain, so I thought it would be just easiest to, in that tuition line, just put the extended school year program and create a whole separate line and just call it tuition offset. So you'll see in the version 3 budget, there is a line that's called tuition offset. There's a negative number in there. That's the 240 grant and the circuit breaker.
Yeah, please.
The change in the circuit breaker estimate, do you know what percentage that was? Was that from 60 to 64 or 65%? What we're anticipating for the reimbursement for that caused that change?
It wasn't a change on anything that the state was doing. We had conservatively budgeted the circuit breaker in the version 2 budget, and when we were taking a look at overall at the large increase for all the towns, we were really putting things under the microscope and saying, what extra could we do?
Right,
So-
because if I understand correctly, because the state's reimbursed 65%, which is considered fully funded for the last few years, so I guess I'm just wondering what percentage we had conservatively estimated and what, I know that we don't know the number, I'm just wondering where we're at, like budget-wise, are we at 65%? Like, are we expecting the full reimbursement this year? Is that where that change came from, or are we expecting, I don't know what we were initially budgeted for, so.
We were initially budgeted for $1 million,
Okay.
and we took a look at the FY24 reimbursement of $1.2 million and adjusted. So it wasn't the extraordinary relief files are being put together this week, and so that's not something we had available to look at and say, this is what we expect and this is what the percentage is, if that makes sense.
And Dr. Prue, were you about to tell me that 75% of the circuit breaker is fully funded, not 65%? Is that your?
It's
75%
Of the
is
over,
what the
right,
state has
okay.
used for the past 3 or 4 years.
That's what I meant then,
Yeah.
not the
And
65%, so.
transportation is 57%. We
Right.
also have this week an additional 2 students for out of district, so their
Yeah.
costs can also be embedded into that, which we can account for the change with that.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat that in front of the microphone. Sorry.
So it's the just to make sure I've got my numbers correctly, then, it's the transportation reimbursement that's considered fully funded at 65%, circuit breaker considered fully funded at 75%, and that's of 4 times the amount of regular day education, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Panarisi, Director of Special Education and Student Support Services, is going to speak a little bit more about what Ms. Hickey talked about in Mrs. Coleman's questions. Please.
So the state, when we look at the historically, how much they have reimbursed us is 75%, but it's not 75% of the cost of the tuition. We have to make a foundation budget, which is like $52,150. So anything over $52,150 that we're spending to support students with special education services, tuitions, not transportation, that's separate, tuitions, related services, PACES services, we'll get 75% of that back. If the children are homeless, you get 100% of that back. That's the tuition side of things. Then there's the transportation side, and that's a little bit more tricky, because in the past, the state has given us 75% of a reimbursement rate of all your tuition costs. In this particular case, for the past couple of years, they've done the 57%. So it's better to estimate on the low end than the high end, and then be pleasantly surprised if they end up giving us 75%.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Panarese, because I know how committed you are in collaboration with the building-based administrators of providing a least restrictive environment for kids within our building so that they can be educated in the community with their same age peers. I know how committed you are to that, so thank you. All right.
So on to the next slide, please. Version 3, just to recall, utilities have been budgeted with a 5% increase. Substitute line was increased and does include our building-based subs. That's where we pay for, that's the line we use to pay for our building-based subs. Shared cost contracts have not been finalized by the Joint Committee, so those have not been updated. There are shared costs in this budget, but they have not been finalized. Homeless transportation is level funded at $50,000 for the 2 schools. Some resource reallocation was made to address priorities, and our principals in our very first budget presentation went over those details. Out-of-district vocational. We currently have 5 students in our programs. 8 placements have been budgeted to accommodate additional applications, and April 1st is the deadline. Next slide, please. Circuit breaker tuition reimbursement was estimated at $1.1 million. The offset has already been taken. We discussed that. Regular education reflects a 9.5% increase of $971,041. Level service. We have not added any additional staffing. Special education reflects a 37.5% decrease of $2,248,282. The total budget is realizing a decrease of 7%, or $1.224 million. Payroll and staffing represent approximately 72% of the regular day budget. Not included in this budget are the additional staffing requests made by the principals in our previous meetings. It does not account for any potential enrollment increases, for example, kindergarten, unforeseen enrollment increases. We want to remind the committee of the reasons why we're making these changes. We talked about what needed to be done, and we talked about the Department of Education. If you recall, in 2021, it became apparent to us through a negotiation session that our Silver Lake Elementary programs were not in compliance with our actual regional agreement. And at that time, we began meeting with the Department of Education and our chairs in our different school committees and our attorney to talk about steps we could take to fix it. The Department of Education gave us until June 30th of this year to make the change, and you'll recall that we asked the towns to incorporate pre-K into the regional agreement, as we had been doing for a long time. And in the late fall, early winter, all of the towns had voted to incorporate that into the regional agreement, and in addition, a number of pieces of the regional agreement also needed to be updated to comply with state regulations. In 22-23, recognizing that we're going to need to make these structural changes, we began to more fully utilize our financial software. For example, we developed a centralized HR database, which Dave Turcott played a strong role in, and we thank him for his leadership on that project. We worked with the Silver Lake School Committee on making sure that we had correctly funded our stipend positions and working with our booster organizations to address issues that were brought to our attention there. In 23-24, we began addressing the Silver Lake configuration, not only with our unions, but in all of our school committees and with our towns, and we began correcting the financial structural issues through the building of this particular budget and through the passing of a new regional agreement that incorporated pre-K. Just to reiterate, Silver Lake Elementary does not exist. Silver Lake Elementary programs will need to become part of each town's budget where Silver Lake staff exist in Silver Lake buildings, and we have done that in each of these buildings. So you'll see shifts out of Silver Lake into elementary, but you're seeing a lot more shifting into Silver Lake from the elementary school. Primarily because of the change in pre-K and because we were told late in the fall, early winter, again, through a meeting with the Department of Education, our legal counsel, that in fact we should have always been charging the Silver Lake Regional School District for out-of-district tuitions for secondary students in particular. And then we had this reviewed by two separate attorneys who both were in agreement that is the way that it should be done, it must be done moving forward. And so those costs were moved into the budget for this year. So in our last Silver Lake meeting, as you can imagine, while on the one hand we saw some decreases in our elementary budget, we have to recognize that we're intermingled with Silver Lake, recognizing that Kingston is its own distinct financial district and its own distinct school district. We still have Kingston students, Kingston children in Silver Lake schools. And so we have a responsibility to look at what these changes, the impact it's going to have on not only the impact to the Kingston budget, but the impact to the Silver Lake budget. So Sarah's going to first begin by talking about the assessments where we were on Thursday, and we're going to be updating with the changes that our school committees have been giving us for the meeting on Thursday night. But this is where we were the last time we met with Silver Lake.
Thank you, Dr. Prue. So when I was putting together all four budgets for the four different entities of Silver Lake and Union 31, one of the things that became clear to me is that this is a bit of a confusing year. And if you solely look at the Kingston budget and say, oh, look, our budget decreased by this much, it doesn't give you the complete picture of what's happening. And so one of the things that I did was I put together these three slides in order to give an idea of the overall big picture. So this is the assessment, the draft FY25 assessment based on the version 4 Silver Lake budget. So if you take a look at the Kingston line on this, in FY24, Kingston's budget, Kingston's assessment was $11,882,721.52. Based on the current or the most recent version of the Silver Lake budget, Kingston's assessment for FY25 would be $17,274,382.94, which is an increase of $391,661.42, which is a 45.4% increase. If we go to the next slide, I put in the draft town operating budgets, and I want to apologize. You can see on the Kingston, the KES, KIS, I've colored those in blue because we were literally making changes at 4 o'clock this afternoon to the Kingston version 3 budget, and I didn't have the time to redo the entire assessment and the entire assessment presentation, which is where these slides come from. So this, the town operating budgets, this slide here and the next slide are based on the Kingston budget on Sunday. So if you take a look on the draft town operating budgets, what was the case on Sunday is the FY24 Kingston budget was $16,435,312.84. The FY25 budget was $15,426,471.85. That represented a $1,008,840.99% increase, or a 6.1% decrease. I meant to say decrease on that last slide. And so again, we allocated more circuit breaker and 240 grants, so this 6.1% decrease is larger now. The last slide is what I refer to as the total cost of education. So how much does it cost in the Silver Lake Regional School District to educate all of the students in Halifax, Kingston, and Plimpton grades pre-K to 12 plus? And so this slide adds together the town operating budget for the Kingston Elementary School and the Kingston Intermediate School, plus the current assessment from Silver Lake. So in FY24, the all-in cost for Kingston would be $28,318,034.36. FY25, and again, this number's going to go down because of the changes this afternoon, $32,700,854.79, which would be an increase of $4,382,820.43, or a 15.5% increase. Looking at the big picture, when I first started when I did the first draft of the assessment at the beginning of February, at that point in time, that number in the bottom right-hand corner was 18.9%. It was a very large increase. The administration was directed by the Silver Lake School Committee to go back and put everything under a microscope and look at every single budget line and determine what could be changed, and we did make significant changes over the course of 1 week back in February, and went from 18.9% down to 13.1%, and I'm going to be redoing the assessments tomorrow for Thursday night's presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're fortunate to have two members of our committee who serve on Kingston as well as the Silver Lake Committee. So I'm gonna ask Michael or Jean, or both, to speak from their perspective if there's anything that they think, based on their dual knowledge, should be shared with this entire committee.
Do you want to go first?
Michael?
I think you need more information on Thursday to see the bigger picture. I think what you've done over the past few meetings for the Silver Lake has helped clarify where the money's going a little better. I know we're going to have a couple of hours on Thursday to review it further, and I think that'll definitely help to see, just the bigger picture here, just specifically for Kingston and the impact to the town here.
All right, thank you, Michael. Jean?
I strongly recommend all school committee members, not just all of the Kingston school committee members, but everyone attend on Thursday night to kind of see the big picture now that a good portion of our budget has been moved to Silver Lake, to, I think, kind of understand where the funds have gone or where the funds have come from. I have a real concern right now with the budget situation. I think that, I feel like every time I've asked a question tonight, I've probably seemed a little bit defensive, but that's not my intention at all. Asking all the questions of Mrs. Hickey, especially who just came on board with us in December and has done a phenomenal job getting up to speed, and Dr. Panarisi also, who just came in as Director of Special Education. I think there's a lot of questions that the public has about our budget, and as I've said many times over, if we can't understand our budget, we have no business asking for it. And I think that the understanding of this budget, it's not going to come easy. It's especially not going to go through the town easy, because looking at the assessment right now, Kingston can't afford it. So knowing that, and knowing that right now Kingston, as a school committee, we're looking at a negative increase of 6%, negative 6% increase. I see the change to the Silver Lake budget where there's already rumors going around that we're cutting teachers, and we haven't seen any versions of those cuts. So there's a lot of concern about the budget. There's a lot of concern from within the buildings, from the community, and I think that unless we're able to break down all of the numbers and where this spending is coming from, I know that when I had made a comment earlier in the meeting about the $101,000, it doesn't even touch upon the increases that we've seen to our budget over the last couple of years regarding many issues. Currently the state's in a very, very, very dangerous financial predicament, and we're not going to see a lot more aid. We're not promised any more aid. So I just think that when we're looking at these figures, we need to be honest that we can only control so much of our budget. We cannot touch special education costs. Those children are entitled and by law are protected to those services, but it deeply concerns me as a parent who has 6 children within the school system that the cuts are going to be made one way or the other to be able to afford the budget, and it scares me where the very, very few line items where these cuts can come from. So I strongly urge everyone to attend on Thursday night and keep following the money to see where, to hopefully hear that there's been a found revolving account with $5 million in it to offset all of this. Because right now we're really, I think, hopeful that something is going to be determined that it's been improperly moved over or moved back. So, thank you.
To be completely honest with the committee, I live in Halifax. These are my tax dollars we're talking about. And on February 1st, when I was sitting in my office and working on the assessment, and I saw that 18.9% number, I haven't really slept well ever since then. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, I am looking, I would love to find that I made a $4 million mistake somewhere. I would be professionally embarrassed, but I would be dancing around with balloons and streamers saying, hey, look, we're in a good place now, and it's been more than a month, and nothing has shown up yet in that.
I'll be the first to say, please do not be professionally embarrassed, because the complexity of this system and the way that it was illegally structured, that we've now got to unweave, I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think it's just something that unfortunately has gone layers by layers by layers, and now there's accounts out there that we don't even perhaps know they exist. So hopefully we can unravel these revolving accounts and find something. One of the things I do want to mention, Tim, if I may, is I had asked Ms. Hickey last month, and the question's been clarified to me now. I was concerned as to why we were still looking at such an increase in the Silver Lake payroll, since we have so many positions coming over to the local budgets. But the answer, I believe, is that those positions were funded out of revolving accounts. So they weren't part of the Silver Lake payroll line item. They were, it was part of the more unraveling that we need to do with the Silver Lake program that should not have existed as it did. So I'm glad I got clarification on that, because that was about a $2 million difference that I was hoping that was one of the questions. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Jean and Mike. Tricia and Megan, if you have anything to share or discuss, please feel free to do so. But it's a daunting task for the administration and for all 4 school committees. It's not a fun time, but it's an important time for us to dedicate our time and energy to getting this right for the betterment of the entire district. So, Tricia and Megan, do you have anything to share, or we can move on?
Only one question I do have in clarification. You had mentioned that the budgets, the numbers that we're looking at, the total cost of education, none of those are,
I get you, go.
Thank you. All those are not with the additional teachers that we talked about?
Yes. Correct.
And the principals? Okay.
Correct.
May I ask one piggyback question on that? Mr. Materna, last month you had presented about how we had an unfilled position last year. That position is still part of this budget, so it could ideally be used for that additional teacher, at least, that you were talking about. It would just be a restructuring of those line items. Because I do want to make sure that we have funds right now currently in the budget for at least some of those requests, but they would just be kind of taking the funds that were not filled from last year. Is that correct?
So we have budgeted based on the positions, so if there was an open position, then that would
Carry over.
that could be flexed to another purpose.
Thank you.
So there's a question. I probably should know this. If a position in a school is no longer needed for whatever reason, and and then an additional position is needed elsewhere, what steps does the building-based administration or central offices need to take to reallocate that position? So it's budgeted for. What steps do they have to take to move that position into a different area of instruction?
It will depend on the licensure required. So if we're talking about just a different assignment, the building principal has the authority to redeploy and reassign. If we're talking about different licensure, we could, in theory, be talking about a layoff for one person
Okay,
and reposting for a new position if the licensures are different.
okay,
If the licensures aren't different and the principal can redeploy, oftentimes that goes pretty seamlessly.
okay. All right. Thank you. All right, any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right. The next item on the,
We're still going.
oh, go ahead, sorry. I got excited.
So for your review, we have included the KES enrollment and projected class sizes. We have included the KES additional staffing proposal, which is the special care classroom, and the additional request of the .4 music teacher. We have included the KIS projected class size comparison. We have included the additional student supports requested with some potential reductions to help defray the costs of those additional supports requested. What I'm going to ask you to do is, although I would love to ask you to vote a budget this evening, and it pains me to ask you to wait, I think it would be thoughtful and prudent to wait until the Silver Lake presentation on Thursday night. I think your next steps, based upon that information, will be to reach out to your Board of Selectmen, to your Finance Committee, to express any concerns that you may have, knowing what our next steps may entail. But I think Thursday night will be an important evening for both Silver Lake and the towns as we once again go over the potential assessment costs before we make decisions about our elementary school budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Tim.
Jean?
Because I'm just looking at the KES additional staffing proposal, it almost pains me to say, I think we're going to be paying many of those costs whether we want to approve them or not, because if it's special education and it's a special education IEP, then we're going to be on the hook for those costs whether we approve them or not. So I just want to make that note when we're looking at, especially for a special education teacher, if that need arises through IEPs, then we're going to be funding that. And the specialized equipment, if that has anything to do with the child's IEP or anything like that, then we're going to be funding that anyway.
And in the CARES classroom, and I don't know if that's the acronym you'll use too, in that classroom, earlier, I believe you said a nursing assistant. This currently says a nurse, presumably an RN. If it's the difference between a fully licensed nurse versus a nurse's assistant, would there be a saving in funds there? I don't know. It would be, okay. So there's some hope. We might not have the clearest picture yet, but there are areas for this to be reduced. Jean's correct. If we're providing the service in building versus out of district, there's still costs that are required to be paid. So that is something for our consideration when we individually take a deep dive in this budget. Okay. So that was KIS. Did you want to review? KES. Did you want to review any additional positions at KI?
KI, we were listed, I didn't name them out, but I said that they were listed there with the additional potential reductions to help defray the cost. The total increase for those positions is estimated to be around $95,000, given the reductions listed in red.
Okay.
The other item is that we have been speaking to the elementary schools in both Plimpton and Halifax to prepare them for the reality that Kingston needs the entirety of its FTE to meet the EL needs in fiscal year '25. That comes with the caveat that the Kingston budget will no longer receive about $15,000 from those two schools for that service.
Thank you. Any concluding questions for Dr. Prue? All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, reports from any standing committees? Nothing at this time from administrative review. Bylaw? Plymouth Area Collaborative, Tricia already had spoken to that. Jean, Union 31?
There was a shared cost discussion in February. Nothing has been finalized to vote. I believe it's going to be dependent on the current situation with Silver Lake's budget, what is voted for the shared cost amounts, and then those assessments will be available. I believe Sarah will put them into our budgets once they're available.
Okay, great. Negotiations? Not at this time. Budget advisory, that is an ongoing process. Thank you. Facility oversight, Dr. Prue asked us to dive into the analysis of our buildings. We will do so. Policy and technology, Michael?
Nope, no meeting.
Okay.
I did have a question on facility. There was a grant that we applied for roofing, and do you know when that information comes back? Oh, I'm getting
She does
yelled at a
not
lot
like that
tonight.
microphone.
So I'm just curious, is there any return information, expected information from the decisions on the grants?
No,
Do they typically take-
we have applied
Right.
for the KES roof, MSBA. We applied at the end of last week. It was just submitted. Typically, it takes a few months. It's difficult for me to give you typically how long it takes, because the first year that I submitted a proposal was COVID, and we didn't hear for a very, very long time. So it's hard for me to estimate. And then after that, the following year, they had done they weren't accepting proposals for accelerated repair. So it's hard for me to give you an estimate based on the fact that it has been different every year so far. But as soon as we know, we certainly will update you and the town, because it required both the approval of the school committee and the town.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any new business? Does anyone want to share anything that may be on? No? Okay, thank you. Approval of bill signatures, single signature warrants?
I apologize, I included that in the
No.
financial update
Right.
because I was searching through my email. I apologize, I've already included that in my financial update because I was searching through my email looking for the correct numbers for that, the shelter reimbursement. So,
No new information.
done out of order, nothing new in the past 45 minutes.
All right, phew. All right, thank you. All right, other matters unforeseen at the time of posting. This is me, and I'm asking for the committee's flexibility and cooperation. I have an unforeseen and non-negotiable commitment on April 2nd. And I'm proposing either a shift of the date for our April meeting or possibly moving the time of that meeting. But I want that to be in collaboration with you guys. Dr. Prue shared with me some dates that would be workable for her and her team. Can you share that with the committee to see if that works for them?
I believe that was April 8th and April 9th.
So if you guys could take a peek at either of those dates. Obviously, going into the April meeting, where we'll be considering the budget, it's important that we're present, whether it's physically or remotely, but that we're there to make an informed decision and vote.
Is this our public, the school choice hearing in April, that meeting?
Typically, we hold our school choice hearing in April, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I could do Monday, 4/8.
Is it in person or virtual?
That could be our decision.
Okay.
We're fortunate to have the remote option. I believe it's more important that all 5 of us are present than that we're in person. So if there are dates that work for all of us, then let's iron it down and go from there.
Is April 8th far enough out to approve the budget for the town's purposes? Does that give us enough time to submit it to the town, since we are likely not going to move on a budget approval tonight?
It must be approved 45 days in advance of the town meeting.
Which is May 18th right now, right?
Yep. I think that sounds right. That's what I have on my calendar.
That's
Maybe
not
18th.
enough days.
May 18th?
May 18th and
Yeah.
April 8th.
It's 10 days, 42 days maybe.
So that would be 42.
That would be my only,
Yep.
It'd have
Are
to
we
be
aware
Thursday or
if
Friday before.
town meeting is there a proposal for town meeting to be moved? Is anyone aware of that?
I have heard unofficially that
is that the election?
a committee member, a community member has contacted the town administrator to ask for a delay in the town meeting. But
Okay.
I have heard that unofficially.
All right, okay. I've heard that unofficially
I've heard that as well. And that's because all 3 towns right now are struggling to make sense of the budget with enough time.
All right, so here's a proposal, and it's for our discussion. So if we basically have 2 options, keep April 2nd, but move the time, and we could do it remotely. Move it to a 7 o'clock start and have that meeting held remotely. Or we could move it after then consultation with the town. If we realize that the meeting is going to be moved, we could either have it in person or remote on April 8th.
I'm not available on April 8th.
Okay, all right.
I apologize.
Okay.
Well, that answers that.
All right, so is your preference, committee, and I thank you for your flexibility, to move the start time to later in the evening and have it done remotely?
I could do that.
I prefer that because we're going to have the budget
Yep,
that needs to be approved.
all right. So thank you. I make a motion that we move the current scheduled meeting for April 2nd at 6 PM to April 2nd at 7 PM for it to be performed in a remote format.
What time is that again?
Second. All right. Thank you, Michael. A yes vote approves the changes. Michael?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Jeannie? Yes. Tricia?
Yes.
Timothy's a yes. So I thank you for that personally. Okay? All right. We are going to brief executive session, so upon adjournment, I will ask someone on the committee to read the full executive session motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn the regular session meeting, not to return, to enter into executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for contract negotiations, which is the K through 6 curriculum coordinator and Kingston Teachers Association, and executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, which is the approval of executive session minutes of December 4th, 2023, and February 6th of 2024.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Michael?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Tricia?
Yes.
Timothy is a yes. All right, we are adjourned to executive session. Thank you.